Okay, seeing that it is about, let me see, 8 after 6, I'm going to call this meeting, this workshop of the City Council of the City of Pleasanton, Texas, on April 16th, 2015, to order. And seeing that the mayor is not here at the moment, would you please make a note of that? And of course, I will probably be difficult to get out of the chair, but we'll go ahead and get this started. And item 1 is roll call. Mr. Sines?
Here.
Mr. Best?
Here.
Ms. Persifka? Here. Mr. Gallegos?
Here.
Item number 3 is presentation and discussion concerning the fire station feasibility study, and that would be RVK Consultants and Mr. Pearson, obviously.
Thank you, Ms. Israel. We're going to turn it over to Heath and Stephen. They're here with RVK Consultants. I just wanted to do a brief review. The council directed us to look at a feasibility for a new fire station to be built within the city. We centered on several factors: reaction time, response time, everyone being within the 1.5 mile prescribed limit of an ISO, which is the state rating agency. I'm going to turn it over to Heath. I just might want to make a note. The PowerPoint presentation under this discussion and presentation part of the section has all 3 phases in it for the next 3 presentation and discussion items: the feasibility, the placement and floor plan, and the renderings. Heath will stop at each junction point when he finishes, for instance, the feasibility, when he finishes the placement and floor plans, and when he finishes the renderings, for any kind of questions or comments from the council. And then at the Mayor Pro Tem's discretion, then we can go on to the next item. Thank you. Heath?
Thank you, Bruce. It's good to be back. For those who we haven't been able to present before, I'm Keith Wendrick with RBK. Stephen Guzman is here from our office as well, and Ken Zuslag, who's attended in the past, had a family emergency, so last minute he wasn't able to come, but in the future he will be here as well. So we are here to talk about the new fire station for the city of Pleasanton. So as Bruce mentioned, from a feasibility standpoint and kind of a site analysis, one of the first things we looked at was where the existing stations are, which I have a pointer here, but usually it doesn't work on TV, so I'm going to have to stand here and point. But stations A and B are existing, and the kind of the green and orange / yellow circles here are the 1.5 mile radius that Bruce mentioned that's required by the ISO. Now, you know, these are kind of graphic representations of what that radius is around each station. The reality is, you know, it's a drive time, right, as the truck drives on the road, but just this kind of gives us a general idea of where we are coverage-wise. So the black dotted line is the city limits. And so obviously before we looked here and kind of honed in on the new station being at where we're showing the letter C here, you can kind of see that the kind of western edge of the city is kind of where we were in need of having this coverage. So C is generally located on some airport properties where we're currently looking. It's at the corner Airport and Goodwin. Some of the things that we wanted to point out is, I mean, the 97 corridor here, we get coverage there on the south end. On the north end, there's still a very small section that falls outside of the radiuses of both A and C. But from what that they get currently, this is a much improved. 2 other parts is obviously, let's see, Oak Forest is now within coverage, and then Woodland Estates, which is ultimately part of the master plan, is now falling within coverage there. I think the only other thing that we wanted to kind of point out, so these are at 1.5 mile radiuses. For ladder trucks, that goes up to 2.5 miles. But for the purpose of this specific diagram, we showed it at 1.5 miles. So with that, we'll turn it over for questions or back to Bruce.
Is there any questions, council?
I haven't.
Good. Mr. Pearson,
We're good, Ms. Israel. Yes, ma'am.
would you like to move forward?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So with that kind of general location being identified on the previous slide, this is now an enlarged aerial of the airport site overall. So we've had to rotate it to fit it on the screen a little bit better. So north is now facing to the right. Airport is running left to right on the screen, and Goodwin north to south. So the general location that we're looking at for the placement of this is on this corner. At any time, if anyone has any questions, don't hesitate.
I have, okay.
Yes, sir.
That was my question. So it's been moved from that second picture to that, it's gonna be in the corner now, and that 3 acres is not gonna be available?
Well, so
I'm sorry, Jeannie.
this is all airport.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Mr. Gallegos? Yes, go ahead.
So it has moved to the corner?
Well, I say I'm loosely. So this outlining here, when we go to the net, is what's being enlarged on this slide.
Oh,
So
okay.
that rectangle is showing all of this. So we are leaving 3 acres that are literally on the corner as future development. The station itself will take just about 1.5 acres just to the south of the corner lot. Okay, so with that, we've got roughly a 12,000 square foot fire station. It fronts onto airport. And what we're showing here is 16 parking spaces for public, and then behind a gate, a fenced and secure area, 12 additional spaces that are there for the actual department use, right? And so when trucks are coming back from a call, they will travel through here and around, and they'll pull in through the bay so that at the next call they will be ready to pull right out onto airport for response. Okay. So with that, if there's any other questions, just in the placement, I'll move to the floor plan.
Just one question, and this one is for Mr. Pearson. It would look to me that possibly south of the construction area, there still may be room for some practice fields.
Yes, ma'am.
That's all. Move forward. Thank you.
And you'll see it later on in the
Yes, sir.
discussion action items. We're saying approximately 400 feet south of the intersection, which is, give or take 350, 400. So as we get direction from council, we would more, get a definition of where it's actually going to be placed. These are pretty general, but they're close.
I appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, so this is this 3 acres here we're showing is roughly 350 by 350. Okay. Right, so with that, on the floor plan, this is in the exact same orientation as what we're seeing here. Okay, so on this next slide, we're just enlarging that. So that the parking spaces, public parking spaces, and the fire station parking spaces would be just off to the side here. So the main entry, right, faces airport. And so within there, we kind of have a public designated area. So within this area, we've got a main entry, toilet facilities, drinking fountain, and access to a training room. So this training room could be used for public use, even after hours. This is accessible without access to the rest of the facility. There is a watch office right here that has visual access so that if need be, there's been discussion that, they could actually be kind of the gatekeeper, right, if need be, of buzzing people into this facility during specific times. To the west of this training area, this is where the remaining kind of offices are. So for the fire chief, assistant fire chief, those are located here. An exercise room off of that. So with this exercise room being accessible to maybe people within the city after hours, if need be, they would have access at this point. The back of house entry would be located right off of here. So we kind of separated it into, public, private, but then this is kind of the office, more office administrative area of the fire station. Then on this side is more of the kind of the day-to-day working portion. So we've got sleeping quarters, again, toilet facilities, showering facilities for the sleeping quarters, and then the living quarters and day quarters would be here, immediately off of the truck bays. So by having the day quarters up here, they have access to to an outside area patio for day-to-day use. Like I said, we've got multiple entries onto the truck bay. So whether they're in sleeping quarters, in the day quarters, or even in the office area, they've got direct access out onto the bays. So this is a 3 truck bay. What's dashed in here, is covering the current vehicular and equipment needs that are currently in place, and then even for some future planned pieces of equipment, so that all those things will be housed undercover and indoors. There has been some discussion with the county about them using this as I guess
EMS.
an EMS. I want to say
Ambulance?
Yeah, no, but just a housing facility for a county EMS.
Right.
And so the preliminary discussions have been had, and so that is being a part of this to where it could be adapted if that actually comes online.
Heath, if I might for just a second, for the council's information, the county approached staff about 2.5 months ago. Actually, the first overture or first conversation was between the chief and the director of emergency management services, or the EMS director, and they have a desire to have a second ambulance in Pleasanton. As you know, we have a 24-hour ambulance here by the downtown station. Because of their increased calls for service, and because of the bulk of their calls for service come from the greater Pleasanton area at this point in time, and they see them increasing as we speak, they feel like that they would like to have a second presence here. So the county judge and the county commissioner that covers that precinct actually approached staff about 2 months ago. We showed them a preliminary schematic, and they said that they would get back to us. In the event that would happen, or the eventual reality of that, we have accommodated, there's a small ice room off the bay, kind of in the southwest side of the building, that we would be able to house and secure their pharmaceuticals and those things that need to be refrigerated. And the chief has discussed it with myself and Heath about the fact that the far southern bay would be allowed for the ambulance to be up front, and we would park the truck behind it. In the event that any calls would be forthcoming, the EMS unit could be out of the building immediately. If a call came that necessitated the unit parked behind it had to leave immediately, then that unit would exit the rear of the building and come back through the gate to get out. So we've looked at that in just kind of a pro forma, if you will. Thank you, Heath.
Thank you. So just On the finishing out, kind of walking through the floor plan, this section here is just kind of remainder of support spaces for the truck bay. We've got tool and hose storage, bunker gear, decontamination rooms, a toilet room, and then a room for the scuba gear, which is for the breathing apparatus. Off of the truck bay as well, we're looking to have a mezzanine above the sleeping quarters, which would have some storage capability, but for the most part, that's where the mechanical systems would be to serve all of these spaces. So with that site plan and floor plan layout, I'll turn it back for any comments or questions.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Best.
What is the sleeping capacity going to be?
So we have four dorm rooms with 2 beds each.
So it'll be 8. And then the classroom, what is the seating capacity expected?
In this particular kind of like classroom layout, it's
Yes.
30 people.
30 people in the square, do you have an estimated square footage?
Yeah, I do, sorry.
Yeah. You can right here, back here. Yeah. I don't think you can hear that.
So it is just under 700 square feet.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, Mr. Gallegos?
The chief, I'd like to ask the chief about this station.
Thank you,
Is
Mr.
it
Gallegos. Yes.
everything you need?
Or
We put a lot of work into it, a lot of visits with Heath on phone calls and conference calls, and we revised it 3 or 4 times, I guess. Move stuff around, change doors here and there, it meets our needs.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Any more questions? You'd like to, we can move on to item 5?
okay. All right, so next slide will be a couple renderings of the facility. So I'll just jump into it.
Oh.
All right, so this is a very similar orientation on the floor plan. Truck bays on this end, public entry, training room. So as you come in off airport, right, these are the public parking spaces we mentioned, a secured area with the department stations behind and a drive, right, to go all the way around. So with that, to kind of go off of what Chief said, we have had several meetings. We've done a programming document to identify, each space, how many spaces of those, a dorm room as an example, that we would need 4 of those. We've sized each one of those rooms. I'll say we toured 4 fire stations to kind of look at other examples of similarly sized, talk to those staff and fire chiefs, things that they like, what they would have liked to have done differently. So with that, what we've come up with is a floor plan that's just shy of 12,000 square feet. What we've been looking at is that this will be of a metal building type construction is what we're thinking at this point. And so with kind of giving the hierarchy in terms of volume to where the truck bays are, stepping that down above the administrative areas, and then, taking some of the Pleasanton limestone, you see in the schoolhouse or across the street at the library and the Freedom Center, and then using that to kind of give a very, that formal public entry to the facility. Some site walls to just kind of act as backdrops to any landscaping in that, and then integrating that into a kind of monument sign, so that on the next slide here, which would be more from a eye level, if you will, from airport, this is kind of an
Heath, could you speak about the fact of what we talked about between you and I and the chief about the red metal running vertical and how you would break the building up aesthetically with the gray metal? And you know, because I had a question about that gray metal, and you talked about the number of providers that can provide that. It's not just a siding like we would see in a residential setting that somebody would apply. It's really metal. Could you speak to that?
Thank you. So, you know, part of what we want to do as we develop the floor plan, right, 12,000 square feet, you know, we're trying to be as efficient as possible with the way that plan lays out so that it's cost effective. But at the same time, you know, we still want this to be an attractive facility that you know, has an image, right, to the public. So with that, as I had mentioned, that we kind of gave the vertical hierarchy to the truck bays where we need it, and we stepped it down to the administrative areas. So in addition to trying to, you know, to break up the massing and the volume of this facility, we did kind of pay homage to the fire truck by proposing a red type of metal siding. But as Bruce mentioned, this metal siding would be like of a vertical orientation. And then when we transition to the administrative area, we're showing a gray silver siding that we've turned to a horizontal direction. And so the other thing that Bruce had kind of mentioned is that these sidings are not just necessarily like the corrugated siding that you see on the side of a barn. These come in, I mean, dozens of profiles and depths and widths. And so the idea is that, you know, taking a very simple, you know, form of that rectangular plan and breaking it up in a couple different ways with color and kind of size and texture of these bars in the metal siding to give it a little bit more human scale and kind of highlight where certain pieces are. So as we move forward, if this is approved and we move forward, then we would come back with, you know, with all those different types of actual samples, so that we'd be able to look at some varieties and things of that nature.
Do you have any questions? Ms. Persifka?
What energy efficient things have y'all talked about that yet, or?
So at this point, we haven't specifically talked about any kind of mechanical or electrical efficiencies per se. I mean, obviously, there is an energy code that we would work against as being better than that code. As we move in, you know, right now this is just kind of schematic, conceptual level. Once we move into the design development, we start really identifying those types of systems and what efficiencies are above and beyond what's required by code.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
I have a question, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead, Mr. Gallegos.
Once it goes out for bids, what is the time frame for completion of the building?
So at this point, you know, I've actually talked to a handful of contractors just to kind of get a pulse. You know, and at this point, there's a lot of unknowns still, right? I mean, you know, we've got some nice pictures to show on that, but we're getting comments anywhere from, you know, 7 to 11 months, somewhere in there. You know, just kind of a range at this point until I think we get a little bit more detail. And
If I may interject, Mr. Gallegos, if you all give us direction at the end of the work session here, which is the last item, to bring discussion action items during the regular council meeting as to whether you all will accept the feasibility, accept the floor plan and layout, and accept the renderings, then the next discussion action item is we would ask the council to give us authorization and give us direction to use the construction manager risk method, which we used at the Civic Center Library, which we would bring the construction manager or the general contractor on board about the same time the direction would be given to RVK to start the design and construction documents so they could cost the project all the way through and offer a guaranteed maximum price at the end of construction documents to the council. It's been very successful in recent years, and we can talk more about that, but It would not be a formal bidding process if you give us the latitude to use the construction manager at risk. As you know, with so many uncertainties over here, we had no change orders because we were given a guaranteed maximum price to build that facility.
Do we have any more questions? If not, let's move to item 6.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem,
Let me read it first. All right. Item 6 is discussion and action to direct the city staff to bring discussion and action items at the next regularly scheduled city council meeting for consideration and possible acceptance of the fire station feasibility study, placement and floor plans, and fire station renderings.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem,
Yes, Mr. Best.
I move to direct city staff to bring discussion and action items at the next regularly scheduled city council meeting for consideration and possible acceptance of the fire station feasibility study placement and floor plans and fire station renderings.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second, and please take note that Mayor Powell has joined us. And is there any discussion, council? If not, then let's have a vote. All those in favor of the motion? All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. You can adjourn us.
You gotta tap it out though.
There you go.
Regular meeting will start when?
Well, let's get this one completed first.
Yes, he's going to give the last item, was his adjournment.
Time to adjourn. He was adjourning. No?
All right, item number 7.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Best.
I move to adjourn.
I second the motion.
Moving to second, we adjourn. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Meeting is adjourned at 7:32 p.m.
6:32.
6:32.
6:32 p.m.